Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. We're not streaming today. I don't gotta make you wait. It's a video. I can edit this all up. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Parody07. It's good to see ya. Today, we've got a special one for you. We are doing a tier list. Real original, right? Probably not, but that's okay. I kind of feel like my channel's going to end up being the recycling bin of YouTube anyways. What? Also sounded better in my head. If you were to put in just tier lists on YouTube, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of videos of all kinds of different tier lists. Tier list of food, tier list of characters, of brands, of people, of video games, movies, you name it. There's a tier list for it. Seems to be a way to get a few views. I'm averaging about 12 on mine, so let's try to bump it up with this one. Now, I'm sure you're asking, Parody, what could you possibly be making a tier list of? What authority do you have to make a tier list on anything? Well, who said authority was part of the prerequisites to make a tier list? I want to make a tier list, and it's my opinion, and I'm right.
Are you sure about that?
My goal is to make the best tier list on YouTube. And how am I going to do it? I'm going to make the tier list of tier lists. Literally. I'll explain. So I actually have a tier list set up with different types of tier lists. And we're going to rank them in a tier list. I haven't seen anybody do it before, so I figured I'm the guy that's going to do it. I'm going to make the tier list. And we're going to have a good time with it. Now, in order to make this the best tier list ever, there's a couple things that need to happen. Number one, I've got to be entertaining. That's on me. All right, we'll deal with that as we go. The second thing I've got to do is actually define how we're going to rank our tier list. I think a common mistake that a lot of YouTubers make, or just people in general, when they make a tier list is they don't really define what they're ranking. Now, yeah, they'll say, well, I'm ranking characters. Well, yeah, but what's the criteria for ranking them? They're not describing what the tier list rules are. So what we're gonna lay the rules down. I'm ranking my tier list using 3 criteria. Number 1, we're going with helpfulness / effectiveness. The reason why helpfulness is part of the criteria for my tier list is because I want the tier list to actually give me a helpful or accurate representation of what we're comparing. So if we're comparing things like brands, I want to know, okay, if I'm looking for longevity or duration or overall quality of a particular brand, I hope that the tier list of that brand is effective. And if those tier lists tend to be effective, they're going to get a higher ranking on mine. If they tend to be less effective or not really have a really helpful or effective impact on the person that's looking at it or participating in it, I really don't think it's going to do as well in my tier list. The second thing we're looking for is entertainment value. Why is that important? Because this is frickin' YouTube. Do I have to say anything else? You're not here to learn, you're here to be entertained. Now be entertained. The third and final criteria that I'm gonna use for my tier list is trigger effect. And what does that mean? I mean, like somebody taking a nail to a chalkboard and you wanting to wring their neck, that kind of triggered. The more likely it is to make somebody upset or offend somebody, I'm going to dock it points on my particular tier list. The more likely it is that it's going to make somebody upset, the less likely it's going to do well on my tier list. Once again, our tier list criteria is going to be helpfulness / effectiveness, entertainment value, and trigger effect. And with that, let's go. When it comes to tier lists you're going to find on Twitch and YouTube and different websites like that, you're going to find a lot of sports tier lists. And the reason why is people love comparing their favorite teams and favorite players to other people's favorite teams and favorite players. We're going to go through our criteria for each one of these, and we're going to make it completely fair, and we're going to make sure this is consistent. We're going to make sure that it's fun, and we're going to make sure that everybody agrees, even if you don't agree.
What?
So let's actually start with sports teams. Tier lists, when it comes to sports, are used for a lot of different things. It's used to determine who has the best chance of winning the championship that year, who has the best free agency signings, who has the best draft, who has the best looking players. There's all kinds of different criteria that people try to put a spin on teams, but usually it's just who's the best team for that particular season. And honestly, I don't think they're really effective. I put them in a D, and here's a couple reasons why. I feel like a tier list of teams can be better put together in a regular list, a numbered list. If you want to do the top 10 teams of 2022 for the NFL season, obviously it's number 1 New England Patriots, and if you disagree with me, you're absolutely wrong. Don't try me on this. And honestly, if you're gonna just rank the teams, just put them in order. And if you don't feel particularly good about where your rankings are, then don't make a list. If you feel like the majority of the teams are like in a B tier, that doesn't tell anybody. That's like, you have a bunch of decent teams in this league. That doesn't tell anybody anything, so it's not really all that effective. Entertainment value, it's okay. I feel like if you like the creator, they do a good job, but the tier list in of itself doesn't really give that much of an entertainment value in and of itself, except that they're talking about sports, and if you like sports, that's great, and that's going to add a little bit to it, but I don't think it really has a really good intrinsic entertainment value in of itself unless you have a really good creator. And typically the types of creators that do it are sports analysts or sports like podcast people and that sort of thing, and some of those people are entertaining, don't get me wrong, but the majority of them are kind of straight to the point and monotone, and they aren't really the reason you're watching the content. You're watching it because of the teams, and I don't feel like they do a good job with that. So not really effective. Entertainment value's kind of mid. The last thing again is the triggered. If your team isn't number 1, you're triggered. Am I wrong? Or if you have the opposite feeling, you have a particular hatred of the Patriots, and that person were to put the Patriots in the top A, S, somewhere in there, especially if it's above your favorite team, probably going to be pretty upset. So again, we have the effectiveness is not very high, the trigger warning is high, and the entertainment value is kind of mid. Therefore, we put him in D. All right, next we got Tom Brady here. He's representing a sports players tier list, and I'm going to put them in C. And I'm sure you're wondering, why in the world would I put players above the teams? That seems kind of counterintuitive. You would think they would both be in the same one.
Yes, exactly.
I agree with you that most of the arguments are the same. However, the one difference that I will tell you is that tier lists do a good job of comparing players at different positions. The teams' value is based on the conglomerate of their players, right? The players' greatness or how good a particular player is sometimes can't be compared. So a good example would be Michael Jordan versus Shaquille O'Neal. If they were to go one-on-one against each other, there'd be absolutely no defense. And the reason why is because Shaq would just post up Michael every time, and Michael's not big enough to do anything. Once Michael was on offense, he would either dribble around Shaq or he would step back or whatever he needs to. He'd be a lot more agile and quicker than Shaq. If you were to make a 1 through 10 list of the top 10 basketball players of all time, there's a lot of debate. It's like, well, is it Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Is it Michael Jordan? Shaquille O'Neal? LeBron James? But most of those players play different positions, and it's difficult. I think a tier list does a good job of saying, you know what? Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, they're both S tier because they're the best at their respective positions. Not going to say which one is better than the other, just because it's tough to say. If Shaquille O'Neal was built like Mike and Mike was built like Shaquille, you don't know how good either one of them would have been had their roles been reversed. So I think that's why I think the effectiveness is actually heightened when it comes to this sort of thing. And I also think the entertainment value is about the same as the team, and the trigger is about the same, maybe a little less, because I think people feel a little bit differently about players than they do about teams. Now we can see how this kind of goes when it comes to these two. Let's move to the next one. We've got Adidas. This is going to represent brands, so it's particularly brands of clothes or different things like that. I think brand tier lists actually do a really nice job of going through and comparing the quality and the longevity and the style and that sort of thing of particular brands. If somebody were to do a tier list of brands, I feel like I would also learn about other brands that maybe I have never heard before. And if somebody were to explain that in a tier list, which a tier list kind of makes it conducive to, because you have to explain your reasoning on why you put things in a particular position in the tier list, I would learn something. So there's some effectiveness to it. The entertainment value probably is going to be its worst asset out of all of these, simply because it's just talking about shoes or clothes or hats or something like that. I feel like a lot of those types of things, unless you're really into those things, aren't really inherently entertaining. And the triggeredness of it, I think, is very low. I mean, if you're a hardcore Nike guy and somebody says, well, I'm an Adidas guy, I don't think any of us is going to hate on you for that. And even if they do, they're probably a little weird for that anyways. So I'm actually going to put Adidas in A, mainly because of the low trigger warning and the high effectiveness of it. Next, we have music. I'm actually going to put music at an A. I'm actually going to start with the entertainment value on this one because it's really kind of straightforward. Music is entertaining. There's not a lot of people that like despise music as a whole. Everybody has their own flavor of music that they like, their own type of music, whether it be country or rap or screamo or anything in between. I really feel like everybody has their own flavor when it comes to tier when it comes to music. There we go. So with music, again, I think the entertainment value is very high, because if you're watching a particular person talk about music in general, everybody has their own niche of music, and I'm sure if you're watching a tier list on music, it's probably on music that you like. And maybe if it's not, then maybe it's one that you might come to like. Also going to bleed into the effectiveness of it, and let's talk about that. The effectiveness of a tier list for music, I think, is good. Along the same lines as what I talked about with brands, I really think that music actually does a really good job. Music tier list, I should say, does a really good job of giving people an opportunity to expose themselves to information that they wouldn't have had if they didn't watch the tier list. So for example, if it's a tier list about a particular type of music, then it's probably likely that you're going to hear about artists that you never heard before, and you're going to enjoy getting to know different types of music or music artists or whatever have you based on the information given on the tier list. So I think that music does a good job of being effective. And on top of that, when you're ranking them, it does a pretty good job keeping the peace. And what I mean by that is maybe some person likes a particular song in a particular genre. So let's say you're into Disney music and let's say you have Let It Go right here. And let's say you put it at like an A and you think Let It Go is an A. If you were to rank them 1 to 10 and you were to put a different song up against it, like Circle of Life from Lion King, and you don't know whether you put them at 3 and 4 or 3 and 5 or 1 and 2, and it doesn't really give a good gauge on the gap of difference between the two. You might really like Circle of Life and put it at number 1, and then really like Let It Go, and then everything else is just kind of whatever to you. So 1 and 2 would be like a bold 1 and 2, and then everything else is just kind of like thrown together. But if you put it in a tier list, you could put them both in S, and then everything else you can kind of put in B and C if that's how you really feel about them. That's the beauty of a tier list. It gives you the ability to rank things and actually show the gap of difference. If there's not that much a difference between things, even though you might like one a little bit better than the other, you can still put them in the same tier. But if you like them better than everything else, you can put a couple tiers in between other things to kind of give you a gauge on how much you actually like them. And of music, I think music can be like that, whether you're ranking genres of music and that sort of thing. And the only reason why music isn't an A is the trigger effect. How many times have you been with a group of friends? You're going to a theme park or you're going out to eat or whatever it might have you, and somebody's got an aux cord. And the driver usually is the one that starts with the aux cord, and you listen to their bops and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. And then the passenger decides, hey, I want to put mine in. And he puts it in and the heart's bumping, right? Yeah, everybody likes this music. This is cool. Then it's your turn. You have a song. You put your song on. It's Let It Go. and you're singing at the top of your lungs, and then music stops. Everybody in the car is looking at you with that judgmental look of,
Stop it. Get some help.
it doesn't feel good. It's a really, really, really depressing moment for a lot of people.
Emotional, damn it!
We don't like it. And I tell you, the trigger warning, the triggered effect of this whole thing is very high. Somebody doesn't like your music, they will cut it off and they will judge you for it. Some I have seen even get mad. Therefore, I have to put it music tier list in A, because you know who you are said my music was trash.
That's a lot of damage!
Next, I have The Princess Bride here, and this is going to represent TV shows and movies. And everybody has an opinion on what's the best movie and what's the best TV show and the worst and that sort of thing. And a tier list does a really nice job, again, of comparing things and putting gaps in between things that are better. A lot of people will say Top Gun was a top tier movie. People might say SpongeBob or Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office or something like that is the best TV show of all time. And a lot of people have a strong attachment to those particular feelings and characters and that sort of thing. I think a movie tier list does a really nice job of differentiating, putting the gap in. They're entertaining because we're dealing with movies and TV shows, literally entertainment in of itself. So we're going to go ahead and put this in B as well. The reason why I'm not putting it in A is because I feel like the helpfulness is not quite as high as the music, because yes, there's a lot of movies, but I think most people stick with mainstream movies when they're ranking them, or movies that are popular. They'll stick with Star Wars, they'll stick with Lord of the Rings, they'll stick with, again, like I said, Top Gun or Princess Bride or Disney movies or something like that. And they don't always introduce you to new ones. The trigger effect on this particular thing is a little lower, I think, than what music entails. I mean, if you say Star Wars is the worst franchise of all time and the movies are trash, that's gonna upset about 30% of the United States population and about 20% of the entire world. But it's not like music where if you say I dislike contemporary rock and you offend 80% of America and 50% of the world. Kind of messed up, isn't it? But we're gonna put it in B for that reason. Next we have cartoons. Well, aren't cartoons TV shows parody? Well, yeah, they are. But I think cartoons are a little different because a lot of us have a nostalgia connection to a lot of cartoons. Me, I've got a lot of nostalgia with Phineas and Ferb, Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes. I really enjoyed a lot of like the Justice League and the Spider-Man and Batman shows and that sort of thing. And a lot of those are really near and dear to my heart. And because of that, I feel like cartoons tier lists tend to have a little bit more writing on them. Your opinion on something might not be as strong because you haven't sat and thought and formed a really strong opinion. But when you have nostalgia involved, you're really, really getting into somebody's past, something that somebody has really thought about for a long time. And coming at somebody's childhood, man, that's kind of rough. I really feel like because of that, the trigger effect of cartoons is really high. The entertainment value is going to be the same, if not a little bit more, because of the nostalgia. And then the effectiveness of it, I think cartoons, because there's so many of them and they're nuanced, I think everybody watched a different set of cartoons. Some people are Nickelodeon kids, some people are Disney kids, some people are Cartoon Network or Boomerang kids or whatever have you. So I feel like the entertainment value is high because we're talking about cartoons and nostalgia is involved. And anytime you watch something, you're watching something that you have some sort of emotional connection to or have a history with, it's going to add to the value of that. The effectiveness of it is about the same as the movies, if not a little bit more, but the trigger is going to be higher because of your emotional connection to the show. So we're going to actually put it in A, but above movies, just because I feel like that is where it belongs. Next. Yes. Food tier lists. Now, this, my friends, is our first S. And 1,000 people screamed, wondering
Why?
Very, very good question. Let's go through the criteria again. The effectiveness of it. Once again, we're comparing food. Again, everybody likes food. I mean, if you don't like food and you don't eat, you're probably dead.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
When it comes to food and drinks, everybody likes them. So everybody has some sort of investment in them. So they're going to mean more to people. So it's going to enhance the entertainment value and the effectiveness of it, because it touches everybody. The other thing about food tier lists, as far as the effectiveness goes, it does a really good job of differentiating the different types of food, especially if you do like a mukbang or something like that, where you're trying a popular idea for tier list is I tried every menu item at Taco Bell, or I tried every burger in fast food, or different things like that. I think that tier lists do a really nice job, again, of differentiating the quality of the food based on whatever that person's opinion is. But like, for example, you have like a bacon cheeseburger and a double cheeseburger, and they're both really, really good. But then you have like the chicken sandwich, and let's say for whatever reason it's trash, you just don't like it. You can put the burgers in A and then put the chicken in C or D or lower if you feel that strongly about it, to really compare, hey, if you want a burger at this place, if you get B or higher, these are good stuff. You get C, some people like it, some people don't. You get D or below, probably shouldn't buy it. So they're really effective, and I think they do a really nice job of giving information that's actually beneficial. The other thing, if you look at the tier lists that have the most views on YouTube, all of them are food tier lists. Jay Schlatt and Ludwig especially have really high views on their food tier lists. The entertainment value, I think, is really high. If views mean anything as far as entertainment goes, I think that should be a really good indicator on how entertaining those particular tier lists are. I don't know what it is about it other than people like food, and it's close to people's hearts. And I think the one thing that sets this apart from the rest of the things on my particular tier list is that the trigger value is really, really low, I think. If you're comparing chips, for example, and you're going through all kinds of different chips, if somebody likes Doritos better than they like Lay's, or Fritos better than Tostitos, or whatever have you, like let's say they like Cape Cod chips better than any other chip, I don't think anybody will really fault you for liking one better than the other. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I don't think anybody would go, oh my gosh, you're so cringe and you're the absolute worst type of person because you like dill pickle chips. Ew! So I think that's why the food deserves to be in S tier. The next thing we're going to look at is chains of food, whether it be restaurants such as, obviously I got Chick-fil-A here, but it doesn't have to be just fast food. If you're like Golden Corral, or if you like Miller's, or if you like Benihana's or Ruby Tuesdays. Kind of the same, along the same lines. They got, again, we're talking about food, we're comparing quality, we're really effective. Entertainment value, probably not as high because you're not actually probably watching somebody eat. I'm going to differentiate here between the tier lists that are one particular type of item from a bunch of different places, like a chicken sandwich or a cheeseburger or fries or something like that. I think that's included in what I have in the S tier. What is different about this is talking about the entire menu of Chick-fil-A versus the entire menu of Zaxby's versus the entire menu of KFC, including the restaurant itself, the cleanliness, the service, the price, that sort of thing. I think that those things are effective, but I also think it adds a little bit more triggeredness if you really like a particular place. Like, I am a pro Wendy's and pro Chick-fil-A guy. I love those places. Somebody might like, well, I like McDonald's and I like Zaxby's. you have a particular preference on one of those things, it's going to increase the trigger effect on those particular brands. Whereas if we're just talking about a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A and a chicken sandwich from McDonald's, we're talking about just the food in of itself. So that's why I'm going to put these in an A, because I think it's still really good for cleanliness of restaurants and that sort of thing, and the overall quality of the menu compared to the price. But there's more to it than that other than with food. So we're going to put food chain restaurants in the A tier. Let's compare YouTubers or Twitch streamers or whatever have you. I've got the Dude Perfect symbol here, and we're going to put this in B. And the reason why we're going to put it in B is because the effectiveness of it is good in the sense that you're comparing how much you like something compared to how much you dislike someone else. But we're also, again, having a hard time with comparing people compared to their works. So because we're comparing people, it takes away from the effectiveness a little bit. And I don't think it's right to compare people anyways. If we're comparing the work, it's okay, but the creators in of themselves, I think all creators do work really, really hard to produce good content for their viewers. And it's really unfair to just say, well, one's just straight up better than the other because I feel a certain way about them and I don't like anybody else because I'm loyal to Technoblade or to Dream, for example. You know, there's people who literally dislike Technoblade because of how much they like Dream and vice versa. And I don't think that's really fair, and I don't think that's effective when they're both really good YouTubers. They're both over 10 million subs. And though they're both really good, and it's clear that they're pretty equal on a lot of different levels, and, you know, Technoblade's better, but it doesn't matter in that regard. And again, because you have an attachment to the creators, it ups the trigger value on this particular issue, so we're going to put it in B. I'm going to take a minute and bring it down a second. I'm going to talk about anime. I'm even going to put a timestamp on when I'm done talking about it, because some people don't like anime, and that's okay. But if you got a friend that's a weeb, ask what the best anime is, and they will go on forever. And there are a ton of anime tier lists, a lot. There's probably second to food. Anime tier lists, I think, are the next most popular thing that you'll see on as far as views go on particular channels. But where is anime gonna go around everything else? I'm putting anime tier lists in a B tier. And the reason why I'm putting him in a B, and I'm actually okay with it being at the top of B, is for a couple reasons. Number one, if you're watching a tier list on anime, it's because you want to. You don't willingly click on an anime tier list if you don't like anime. So it's really effective for that particular niche. And I think that actually adds the entertainment value on top of the fact that it is entertainment. People really, really are invested in that when they like anime. I mean, I'm a weeb, I like anime. This particular anime is Full Metal Alchemist. It is objectively a top 5 anime for most people. And I think that's fair. But some people think it's number 1, some people think it's number 5, some people think it doesn't belong in the top 5. But I think because they're all in the same niche, I think that actually adds the entertainment value and decreases the trigger effect. The helpfulness of the effectiveness of it, kind of like music, there's a lot of anime out there. And I feel like if somebody's watching anime, there's a lot of different sections of anime, just like there's different genres of music. Somebody talking about, like, let's say you're mostly into shonen, which is like action and like Pokemon and Hunter x Hunter and that sort of thing. My Hero Academia is probably the most popular one right now. If you're really into the shonen ones, you may not have seen some of the slice of life or rom-com stuff. And you've never heard of Clannad, or you've never heard of My Senpai's Annoying, or Komi Can't Communicate, or whatever have you. And if you're watching a tier list about different anime, a lot of times they put a lot of them on there. The other thing is that you're going to be exposed to new ones. A lot of times, let's say I'm talking about Full Metal Alchemist, right? And I say this is an A tier. And you know what? If you really like this, then you're really gonna like Hunter x Hunter. Or if you like this, you're really gonna dislike a different one. That's the beauty of a tier list. You can make clear the gap between particular shows. You can say, I like Full Metal Alchemist, Steins Gate, and Hunter x Hunter. I put them all in S tier. I think Komi Can't Communicate's an A, and then School Days is a D. I really think that that actually adds to the entertainment and adds to the helpfulness and effectiveness of the tier list. On top of that, because we're all in the same niche, I think the trigger value, if you're like, well, for whatever reason, I don't know why you would ever say this, but you say, I think School Days is an S tier. What? If you say School Days is an S tier, you're wrong. You're wrong. And we all know it. And if you tell me that you truly believe that, you're lying to yourself and to the world. Stop it, repent, seek the Lord. But even if you have that really, really unpopular opinion about School Days, nobody's really gonna like hate on you for it. They'll say you're wrong, but they're not gonna disown you, like, or think less of you because of it, because you're still in the in-group because you like anime. Does that make sense? I think it does. So I actually have convinced myself and moved it up to A, simply because of the lower trigger value. For whatever reason, when I put it in B, I thought the trigger value was high, and I just literally convinced myself on the spot. Waifu tier lists. We all love our waifus. Waifu tier lists. C tier. Did I stutter? Alright, why are they in T tier? Entertainment value, high. People are really invested in their waifus. I mean, it's their waifu. The effectiveness of it. You get to be exposed to all kinds of different waifus, but somebody comes at your waifu, tells you, your waifu, you're number one. That waifu's a D tier. You know what that makes me want to do?
Oh, wow.
The trigger value is enormous. Might be the highest on this list. It's unacceptable. I'll give you a good example. If you're familiar with Trash Taste, you know Joey, right? Anime man. Great guy, right? Reads all kinds of manga, watches all kinds of anime, has an opinion about all of them, regardless if he's seen them or not, or read them. You know what he said? He did a waifu tier list. I think he had 126 waifus on. And a top 3 waifu for me is Asuna from Sword Art Online. And you know what he said? He didn't even rank her that bad. He put her in B tier. But when you have 126 waifus and you put 100 of them in B and above, and you say it's on the low end, that sucks. You know what else he said? He said he was going to completely disregard the quality of the show and just talk about the waifu. He put Asuna in B tier, and I quote, she was the only bearable character in the show.
I can't believe you've done this.
I love Sword Art Online. So you came at my waifu, and you came at one of my favorite animes. You got to be able to differentiate, Joey. I was hurt. So I watched Connor C-Dog VA. No, Joey, I hope you're doing well. You'll probably never see this, but if you do, shout out to you, man. You do good stuff on YouTube, man. Next we have characters / superheroes. We got Spider-Man here. If I was putting Spider-Man on the tier list by himself, he's an S, you know what I mean? S for Spider-Man. However, superhero tier list, I'm gonna put him in a B. Entertaining, pretty high. People have strong opinions on their superheroes, excuse me. I mean, you tell somebody who likes Superman that Batman beats him up, and vice versa. I mean, there was millions and millions of dollars made on the Superman versus Batman movie, and the movie wasn't even really that good. But it made millions because people got beef. Entertainment value might be high on them because it's superheroes and a lot of people like superheroes, but the trigger effect is really high on them, and the effectiveness of them, I mean, it does a nice job of saying, if you're going with like, well, how powerful there is or how good their backstory is or whatever, you might have a lot of people that disagree on, you know, we'll say Spider-Man versus Batman. Well, is his smarts better than his spider sense? It's not, but some people might disagree with that. It's really kind of up for debate anyway, so it's kind of so opinionated that it really defeats the purpose of it other than explaining your opinion on a particular thing. It's not really objective. So we're going to put them in B. However, everybody loves a good villain. Villain tier lists are in A tier. There's not a lot of them, but I think they're fantastic. And here's the reason why. When you talk about villains, you're talking about iconic characters, right? The fact that you're talking about villains at all is kind of nuanced in of itself. But if we're talking about villains and we're comparing Venom, Joker, Darth Vader, icons, it's really, really entertaining. And I feel like because they're villains, if you hate on a villain, you're supposed to hate on the villain. That's the whole point of a villain. It's meant to be hated on. So if you put Joker in A and then put Thanos in D for whatever reason, a lot of people disagree with you, but it's like, I don't think anybody's really going to be all that upset with you for that, because you're supposed to hate on them. So the trigger warning is really, really low on this. And the effectiveness of it, I think a lot of it's kind of cut and dry. Everybody ought to know that Darth Vader and the Joker are iconic villains. It really is difficult to say otherwise. So I think it's a lot more objective than, say, a superhero tier list is. Now, if we're talking about powers, maybe it's a little bit more convoluted, and that's why it's not an S tier. But because the characters in of themselves tend to be a lot more distinguished than a superhero is, it tends to be a little less trigger happy, and it actually, in my opinion, increases the entertainment value, because somebody's opinion on something might actually spark you to change your own mind. Let's get through the last few here. We've got video games represented by a Minecraft. Video game tier lists, I think, do a really nice job of differentiating between different genres, and they do a nice job of going through pricing and that sort of thing, though everything is $60 to $100 nowadays. I really feel like video games aren't going to make too many people upset, so we're going to put them in a B tier. I think top of B is fair, because the entertainment value is pretty high, but I don't think it's quite as high as some of the other ones in A tier, because if they're talking about the video game, I'd probably rather be playing it. I think people would be a little bit more triggered if you say you preferred Fortnite to Minecraft or something like that. That probably would make a little bit more people upset than if you say you think Joker's a mid-tier villain. I really think it would breed more dissension.
It would cause the masses to rise.
So again, effective, yeah, good at differentiating between how good of a game is compared to other games in a series, or good at differentiating games in different genres, but triggers kind of high, and the entertainment value is what it is because it's video games, but honestly playing them is more fun anyways than talking about them, in my opinion. So, and of course mine's the only one that matters because this is my tier list, so deal with it. The next one I have here is, I've got a mic here. This is actually going to represent tech reviews tier lists, and I'm going to put them in A, and I'm going to put them kind of, I think I'm going to put them at I'm going to put them right here, actually top of A. And the reason why I really think that it belongs in A is because it's really, really, really beneficial. Watching a tier list on how people rank something like a mic, cameras, computers, whether maybe you have a different hobby other than computers and that sort of thing. Like, let's say you are into hunting or into bows or into fishing or whatever. You can compare rods and reels. You can compare different types of guns. You can compare different bows. You can compare cars and that sort of thing. I think they do a fantastic job of showing the ratio and comparing the ratios of the quality to the price of what we're talking about. Let's say you like a Blue Yeti mic. I think they go for $150 roughly. I'm probably wrong on that, but I think it's within $20 give or take on either side of that. Or you could go with like a Shure mic or a Rodeo or something that's a little bit more expensive, and you could say, well, this is what you're getting, this is not what you're getting. And on top of that, let's say you say the Yeti mic is like a B tier, and then you say the based on how the quality of it to the price. and then you say the rodeo is a good quality, but it's cheaper. So we're going to put it in A, or we're going to put it in S. The best quality one might be also the most expensive. And that might put it in a lower tier than, let's say, something that's a little bit more cost effective, but actually gives you everything that you need at the same time. And then there's others that are just trash based on the price, and those will be really low. And that'll be a great way for you to go into buying your next product, whether it be a mic, computer, rod or reel, whatever have you. So I think they belong in A. Friends, we've come to the end. The last tier list in this tier list of tier lists. And guess what? It's my tier list. How does my tier list compare to other tier lists in the universe? Let's go through the 3 criteria. Number 1, helpfulness and effectiveness. I think it's been effective in teaching people how good particular tier lists tend to be. And I also think it's been helpful. The next tier list you're probably going to watch after this is a food tier list, most likely. And I also think if you're trying to be entertained, you're going to watch maybe an anime or a villain or a music tier list. And if you're looking for something really, really helpful to compare prices and quality, you're going to look to product and brand tier lists. You're probably not going to watch very many sports tier lists after this, and you're definitely not going to watch any waifu tier lists after this, right? So I think it's been effective. Second, entertaining. Yeah, it's been entertaining. If you're here at this point in the video and still watching, then it's been entertaining. And I think that's good, and that's high. Triggered, I'm right. I've been right the whole time, and you all know it. This has been 100% objective. This has been 100% accurate, and I think the trigger should be absolutely 0 because everybody should agree with what I say. Therefore, mine tier list here is an S tier, and there's nothing you can say to change my mind. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on the notification bell, because if you don't, you won't have any idea when I post or when I go live. Make sure to check out my new Minecraft series that's going to start within the next couple weeks. We're going to be streaming that. It's going to be called Not So Hardcore. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a wonderful evening.